Hi, everybody. Welcome to NewsNite for Friday, April 27th. Great to have you with us this week. We'll talk about the aftermath of the unrest in Kent. Did police move in soon enough? An Akron mom creates quite a debate after she posts a picture of her daughter on Facebook. And Ward 4 Councilman Russell Neal joins us to talk about the unrest in West Akron. Those stories and more next on NewsNite. Thanks for spending part of your Friday evening with us. Let's meet our panel. Phil Trexler joins us this week from the Akron Beacon-Journal. Great to see Stephanie Warsmith with us this week, also from the Akron Beacon-Journal. And always great to see Ed Esposito here this week from WAKR. Certainly, the video told a lot of the story. A huge crowd, police out in force. We've seen this in Akron years ago, not so much anymore, but the scene in Kent last Saturday night was quite something.
Oh, it's Kent State. Come on, give them a break. They got to have at least one riot a year. Isn't that part of the student code of conduct? Ouch.
Well, I mean, the police went in. What I saw in a lot of the home videos online, where there were a lot of fights, there was a lot of disruption out there. It was more than just kids partying that led up to the police coming through there. There were also people up on top of houses drinking. I get the feeling if they'd waited much longer, we could have been talking about some deaths here.
Yeah, disclaimer, I teach a class out of Kent State, and actually one of my students is a photojournalism major who was out there videotaping the events, and he did a fine job of dodging tear gas or pepper gas or whatever they were throwing, and bottles, and it was. I mean, it got out of hand. It looked ugly. It's not a great reflection. I don't know what the students were hoping to accomplish there. It reflects poorly.
I attended and I partied at Kent State. So
I'm a graduate of Kent State as well.
Yeah, of course I did. There's nothing new to this stuff. I mean, everyone's acting like this is actually news every year.
It isn't news.
It's not. It just it happens like daffodils coming up.
I like how the university is asking the students to look at the video and then snitch out on their classmates.
And
That's
somebody
going to
did,
happen.
evidently.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. At least one person.
Who's the kid in the construction barrel? Because there was a picture of a kid who actually hid from the
barrel.
police
Hiding
underneath the construction. Like the police didn't notice the construction barrel had legs. So because the legs are sticking. It is very creative.
Oh, he learned it from Looney Tunes, I think.
Look, the fact of the matter is, and this is, I think this is more of a slam. This happens all the time. People drink, they get out of hand. It's a dead-end street. This is not unique to Kent State. I mean, West Virginia University, it just, it's Saturday, they burn couches. So, I mean, this happens at a lot of universities all around. It's actually part of kind of accepted university behavior with binge drinking and big-time parties. If the police really wanted to crack down on this stuff, they wouldn't wait until it's National Guard time, and I say that on purpose. They would go out there and proactively address the neighborhood and try and keep things in control before it gets wacky.
Just as Akron did, Akron Police and the University of Akron with the May Day events. Remember the full force that they showed, and they were out there patrolling, on horses and on foot.
I mean, it's going to be trouble. Is it going to be trouble? It's another cold, rainy Saturday coming up tomorrow, or for those of you that are watching on Saturday morning, late, is there going to be another one here tonight? Friday night or Saturday night, supposedly there's supposed to be more parties. Again, toward the end of the term, this is part of the social fabric of any college or university. Some take it a little bit higher than others. I mean, go down to Athens over Halloween and tell me if that gets out of hand. If you want it to not get out of hand, send the cops in early and have them at least walk the streets and pick up the more obvious, noxious drunks.
So if this is going to happen on a college campus or near a college campus, we should mention this actually happened in the city of Kent. It wasn't actually on the Kent State campus, but obviously a lot of Kent State students were part of the crowd. What is it that Akron does to quell this that some of these other communities maybe can learn from?
Well, as someone who was actually out there several years in a row as the Akron police and the sheriff's deputies on horse, they were on their horseback riding, and I was following them around, and I actually did get to see a burning chair one year. I was really excited about that, but generally nothing happened because there was cops everywhere. Now, I think that Akron has been quiet now for several years, and I'm not trying to jinx anybody. But they really did have that show of force, on the University of Akron off-campus area, and I know Kent says that they're, going to try to be more prepared this weekend. Not to say that they necessarily weren't. I mean, they brought in the force when things really got a little crazed there over the weekend, but maybe they need to do something like what Akron did.
And maybe did things get more out of hand when the presence of the police arrived? You know, did it actually exacerbate the situation?
Well,
whereas if you had the presence there to begin with, you wouldn't have.
Yeah, I
the
mean,
issues.
it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing. I mean,
Right.
people get drunk and start raising hell, and there is a mob mentality when they're out there partying like that, and you have so many people, and all you need is one knucklehead to do something, kind of cross the line and do something goofy. At the time, it sure felt like fun, but that was after a six-pack. And then one thing leads to the other. So to Phil's point, if you bring the cops in when you already have a nasty, unruly mob, then it escalates into something. If you bring the cops in before it's a nasty, unruly mob, then it just becomes a party that's under control.
I noticed there were 1 million cell phone videos uploaded within just hours out there. It seemed like there was 1 million. Does technology keep more kids close? They maybe would have left, police say, get out of here, get out of here. But now everybody kind of wants to hang on the fringe there and keep their cell phone video. Maybe it's going to show up on the Today Show.
Yeah,
I noticed the crowds stayed longer than maybe in years past they would have for simply they wanted to get shots of.
You're watching the overtime period of the game. I mean, when the cops move in at this point, this is you know who's going to win, but you want to see how they win.
Well, I think some kids, kids in my class said that they got out of there when the pepper gas started to fly and bottles were flying.
Those are the ones that have over a 3-point average, right?
Yeah, exactly. The 3.0 students, left, and the 1.5 guys stayed around. Right, exactly, to get on the camera and whatnot. So, it's a matter.
The kid who stayed under the construction barrel is a 4.0 grad.
Yeah. Honors college.
Yeah, that's right.
But considering how many videos there were out there, I didn't see any that were critical of the police, and certainly if one of the police officers had overstepped their bounds, I think somebody would have caught it on tape. So give me a letter grade here. How did the police do in breaking up a crowd of 3,000?
Nobody was hurt, I don't think. I mean, nobody was seriously injured. Nobody was killed. So, you got to give them credit for that, right?
I guess you give them a B+ though for not having a presence there prior to. I mean, obviously they handled it when they got there. It was handled properly and without incident. But I wish they would have had some sort of presence there.
I would agree with Phil. It would have been nice if it had been proactive, but overall, no Rodney King moment, no police officer pepper spray in the face, outrageous moment.
I think you had some complaints years ago about treatment. There was a lot of treatment. I heard none this year.
Right.
I saw a vision of my future during that story, watching the spokesman, in this case spokeswoman for Kent State, delivering messages Saturday night while I was in the newsroom going, a year from now, in this same incident, I'm going to be on the other side of this.
I thought you were looking at a
It was
vision
very
of your
awkward.
future because you have
my
three
kids are going to
sons
college.
Right. That's going to be your kids.
You're already saving up the bail money, aren't you?
Let's hope that's not where this heads. But shifting topics for a second, a local man is now suing because he was fired. His name is Kevin McGee, and Phil, you did a story on him. He's a National Guardsman, and he lost his job the day he comes back to work.
Yeah, he's working at Summit Disabilities and Development as their spokesperson. Been there for several years, 10 years, I believe, making $100,000 a year. Little background here is he went off to the National Guard, joined the National Guard 4 years ago at the age of 36, and felt as though once he did that, there was some treatment there at Summit DD that he was no longer welcome. There was a 1-year contract instead of a 2-year contract, all sorts of things. It comes about in December or January. He files a lawsuit of discrimination for his treatment as a National Guardsman from Summit DD. Goes on to duty, and then lo and behold, the first day back, earlier this month in April, he was fired. So they're alleging all sorts of problems with his handling of their campaign, using inappropriate funds to pay for T-shirts or signs and whatnot. So there's a real battle there, and Kevin McGee is outspoken about the treatment that he's receiving, and it's just the timing of it is very curious. There is a pending lawsuit, but in talking to the leaders over there, they're saying the timing is what the timing is, and just they felt that they had the grounds to fire him.
Reasons aside, a county agency?
That's a ridiculous argument that the timing is what the timing is. They're in control of when they fire somebody. The fact of the matter is they can still keep him on board with or without a contract. They don't have to have a contract for him. So if he were really that problem, I find it stunning that any employer in this day and age, after we've been at war for 10, 11 years, I find it stunning that any employer would be so stupid as to do something like this, is to let someone go when they return from military
I'm
service.
a little curious, too, because there's the pending lawsuit, so this really just adds another facet to that lawsuit. So, it's curious that they didn't just let him run. His contract was expiring in October anyway. Right. Let it run out, but, hey, we'll see.
I want to talk a little bit more about why this is not as unique as people might think as we move the conversation now to NewsNite.net.
For more NewsNite content, including extended discussions, full interviews, and the chance to speak your mind about the issues, join us online at NewsNite.net.
If you have teenagers, you can empathize with Denise Abbott. Her 13-year-old daughter acts up, gets mouthy, gets a little immature from time to time. But did you agree with her decision to put her daughter's face on Facebook, a photo of her with an X across her mouth, saying, "I can't keep my mouth shut"? I broke this story on Monday. 96 hours later, she's on the Today Show with polls on the cable networks across the country. Not every parent would go this route. Is it worth the controversy? And what do you think about it?
Well,
people are talking about it.
Certainly
for sure.
much more important than the war in Afghanistan. There's a mother blocking out her daughter's mouth on Facebook. Of course, that deserves to be on the Today Show. Yeah. So yes, that
should have been on the front page of the Beacon.
Yes, exactly. And on NewsNite.
And
Akron News Now.
Should have had it on
It's on NewsNite.
It's on NewsNite. So creative parenting. She says you got to change with the times.
It's not the first time this happened. There was the video of the guy who posted on YouTube, basically where he took out his gun and shot his daughter's laptop. Did you see that? Yeah. It's very entertaining. It's an informative. In this day and age when kids are using social media to flame their parents, should we be surprised that parents use the same thing to kind of even the score at the kids and kind of bring it around to them? If anything, this Akron mother was kind of restrained. She didn't pull out a gun and shoot the computer. But she kind of got her message across. I think it was your story that talked about how the daughter kind of got the message. So, it worked.
And also, too, you're seeing a lot of public humiliation tactics being used by parents. You see a lot of kids carrying signs at street corners.
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more common that this public humiliation is being enforced. I guess it's better than corporal punishment, but...
Well, I think it's interesting. I know, I only have a 5-year-old, so she's not Facebooking very much, but I know other people with older kids who are, going on Facebook anonymously to see what their kids are writing and, doing things like that. And I don't know, where's that line, where you should be doing these things or shouldn't be doing these things. I don't know.
You will in about another.
I guess I'm going to find out, aren't
so,
I? Yeah. Maybe I'll be doing that.
What did the daughter open her mouth about anyway?
Well, the background of this is that she'd acted up before and got her cell phone taken away, earned it back. Then she acted up again, and it was cell phone and Facebook and so forth and so on. But she lit her mom up in front of her friends during a sleepover with, "You're not doing this, and you don't do this." And then she lit her mom up on Facebook. "My mom won't let me do this. My mom's a bad parent," those kind of things. So mom slept on it, got up and said, it's time to do something different.
Well, that's the venue. The daughter, with all due respect, the daughter picked the venue on this, not the mom.
And at least it's not like the Alliance daughter who took mom's weed and took it to school.
That was another story. They said the 13-year-old where they fed,
I don't want my mom smoking weed anymore.
Yeah, mom promised she'd stop smoking pot, so I'm going to take it to my school locker. It's like, whoa, hold on a minute there.
Good idea.
Well, and when I first saw this photo, I knew that it could take off like this. I knew it's not as significant as the wars, but certainly would get a lot of airtime. Have we reached a point, though, where we can predict that the media is going to look for entertainment value over simple local stories, over things that are so much significant?
I think we're all interested in the social media aspect. The fact that this is Facebook or, something that's on Twitter or something, there's a video on YouTube. And so we're all interested in that. And frankly, this is something that makes good, broadcast.
I agree with Steph. I think it is a little bit more than just entertainment. I mean, the fact is, the three of you have kids. So, you've already got them where they're going to talk back to you occasional. You're almost there, and you've got maybe another 10 years. So, so at this point, as much as being social media, it's a social phenomenon. It's the world we live in, and it's kind of the changing ways that parents have to parent in that time, and kids get to be kids in that time. I mean, when back in the old days when the gray hairs were, we didn't have cell phones, so they couldn't take that away from us. They took away the car keys.
Cars?
We did have cars back then. It's kind of the Barney Rubble car. You just use your feet to get around. But it's just a different world. It's another example of how things change.
Well, speaking about how things have changed, Akron said goodbye to one of its stalwarts politically, John Ballard, the former mayor of Akron, who led the city in the 60s and early 70s, passing away this week. getting credited both from Democrats and Republicans and even those that didn't really follow politics as really having made a significant contribution to this community.
Well, he was mayor during a very tumultuous time. You know, you had the strikes that were going on at the rubber shops, you know, and he did usher in, you know, a lot of good things in the community. And so, yeah, I think people were bidding him fond farewell and remembering the contributions that he did make during his tenure.
You know, the fact of the matter is you can still just drive up and down the street and see things that were there that he got started. You know, Canal Place, Cascade Plaza, and to the point of being tumultuous, you know, it was a time when we were at war and there were protests, there were, you know, race riots, there was an economy that wasn't in transition, it was heading to the dumpster. You know, if anything, I think probably what sticks out more than anything else is that he provided calm, serious leadership.
Right.
And he was also, too, consulted, I guess, by Pasquale. He was one of those people that Pasquale leaned on for advice, running ideas up past there. And I thought it was interesting, too, is that there was a lot of bipartisan sympathy being sent around through everybody. Even though he was a Republican mayor, the Democrats were still, I think, hold him in some regard. Even though, I mean, that was a tough time, and Akron didn't come out of the 70s, you know, looking very pretty, you know.
But a lot of the stuff that he did still carries forward to today, so I think it's kind of, you know, legacy decisions were made. But, you know, also taking a look at, as you were saying, the bipartisanship of that, you don't necessarily have that now. But you didn't hear people saying he was a good Republican. You heard people saying that, you know, he was a good mayor, he was he was a good man.
I think it was interesting. I learned some things about his background in reading his obituary, that he was a World War II veteran, that he'd been county prosecutor first and had run for some other political offices.
City prosecutor, too, I think.
Yeah, and hadn't always been successful in some of these runs. Is there a politician today that, you know, you can see as similar?
You know, it's funny. We talked to his son, and I think you did too, when John H. Ballard, and he said it was funny that his father had always told him that he didn't want to run for mayor. He actually wanted to stay in the prosecutor's office and continue a legal career. Didn't want the political career, but he got talked into it. So, yeah, I don't know if that's true. I guess we'll find out if that's true in Akron whenever Don Plasqualic decides he's had enough, and then the feeding frenzy starts as to who replaces him.
A good look back to a good man. And we'll thank you as we have a guest coming up. Ed, Stephanie, Phil, thanks for being with us. Russ Neal is next.
On NewsNite.net, we cover a broader range of topics than we can on the air in 27 minutes. Be part of the conversation on our Facebook page and at NewsNite.net.
Several weeks ago in this program, we talked about West Akron in depth after a series of shootings brought a lot of negative light to the community. The search was on for the shooters, and a lot of violence was wreaking in the headlines. Is that really, though, what's going on in that community? Joining me now is Ward 4 Councilman Russell Neal. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
There is so much more to Ward 4 and West Akron than just what happened there. But with these latest incidents, what's the climate, what's the feel right now in your neighborhoods?
Well, of course, people are concerned. It's been documented. Some of the young people are afraid. You know, they're fearful because this isn't the norm in that community, in our community. But out of this tragedy, you know, the strength of the community has come to the forefront. There's been a number of groups, from young people at the school to grassroots organizations to the police department, the clergy, organizations coming together to address the issue.
Let's talk about each of those groups. Start with the young people and their families. What are they doing? What do they need to be doing to help improve what's there?
Well, Bookto is a very, which is the high school in West Akron, is a very close-knit community. Matter of fact, one of the taglines we use is Bookto is more than a school, it's a family. Those children have rallied around. There's been an article about some young ladies that have come forth, and they've started an organization called Praying for Better Days. And they just want to be a positive influence amongst their peers. So that's one organization that's come forth amongst the young people. As far as a grassroots organization, there's an organization called Stop the Violence. A young lady by the name of Dorita Davis, Coach Rob Deck, John Orsby, there's some others whose names escape me right now. They've come together, and they're more like in the trenches, if I could say. And they've been educating the community about the importance of operating as a community, communicating with one another, and just stopping the violence. Lieutenant Charles Brown, who is in our COPS, Community Policing Department, he brought a program to the community called The Interrupters. It was a documentary folks from all different spectrums of our community, professional, grassroots, clergy, came together at Akron General. And we viewed that documentary to see how Chicago is dealing with the horrific violence that's taken over their community. And what that documentary showed us, it brought to light a program called the Interrupters. And interrupters are persons who mediate disputes amongst folks in the community. And they go through a training. So he brought that program to us, and it's something that we're looking at implementing here. And then last was a group called Love Akron, and one of the other ministerial alliances met back in December, because, you know, this all jumped off in December when we had all these shootings that were taking place across the city. Pastors came together and they had a prayer vigil. And after that, they realized that they had to do something more than just pray. So they brought a group together, and so now that ministerial alliance is made up of Akron Vicinity Interfaith Ministerial Alliance and Love Akron. So that group has come together. So we have all of these groups that are working.
Are these groups making an impact?
In their own way, but what we've realized is that we have a lot of organizations that are doing a work in the way that they see that they need to, but we're not organized. So that's when this umbrella concept came out called Act Now, Akron Coming Together Now. In the initial stages, a young man by the name of DeMario Cooper, Pastor Mark Ford, Pastor Wallace, and myself were talking about how can we network these groups, because the pastors were doing their thing and the other organizations were doing theirs. And in speaking with the other organizations, everyone understands that we need to work together. We have to function as a community, as a unit. And so that's where this Act Now came together. Presently, DeMario Cooper and Pastor Mark Ford are acting as just the facilitators to work out the structure on how that organization is going to work.
Talk to me about the role that you would play, City Council plays, the legislators play, and the police play in helping this movement to go forward.
Okay. Well, one, as far as being a councilman, we took a step back and looked at how could we have prevented some of this from happening. And so, you know, most recently with the loss of life, and I want to, again, extend my condolences to all the families that have lost loved ones, and extend my thanks and gratitude to the people in the community that have come to minister to those families and to step up to be a part of the solution. And then challenge others who haven't gotten involved to get involved. But in answer to your question, we realize that, you know, there's some things that are happening that are giving us signs that there is unease in the community, that there could be disturbances, and I'll give you an example. Our young people, looking at youth violence, spend most of their time in the school. And if there's a problem in the school has a process that they use to address that violence. There's either, you know, they talk to the students, could lead to a in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, expulsion, or a transfer to another school. And when they go through that process, they satisfy that process. In the community, if something happens, a young person is, let's say it happens at the rec center. They may have a time where they're suspended from coming to the rec center or to the library. Or if it happens out in the community and the police get involved, they may get in some problems with juvenile court. Each one operating independently, but they fulfill their process. What happens is, if it happens in the community and we fulfill that process, it doesn't end whatever it is that caused that altercation or that conflict between the young people. And so it carries over into the school. Likewise, if it happens in the school and the school fulfills this process, it carries over into community. So we realize that we have to have a better way of communicating and supporting the nurturing process, the discipline process that happens with our young people. It's just like if you and your wife have a way of disciplining your children, and you send them over, you say, well, you can't watch TV because you haven't done your homework. Send them over to grandma's house and don't tell grandma, well, grandma's going to let them watch TV. That's a very simplistic view where if something happens in one part of our community, and it's not communicated, we don't support the discipline process, you know, things fall through the cracks.
These programs have to communicate with one another.
Exactly.
Which may be where the media comes in. Is the media helping or hurting in this case?
Mixed.
Okay.
Mixed. When it reports the facts and tries to help people understand what's taking place and how they can get involved to be a part of the solution, they're helping. But when they distort the facts or play on a very sensitive issue like race or fear, that right there doesn't help the issue. This violence is not just a West Akron problem. It's not just a Akron problem or a Northeast Ohio problem. It's a national problem. I mean, look what's happened over the past year just in our area. We have what's happened in our city, what's happened in Copley, what's happened in Chardon, just happened up in, was it Brecksville or Brunswick somewhere? This is just in less than a 50-mile radius. And then look nationally. Malcolm X used a term back in the 60s when President Kennedy was assassinated. He said, you know, the chickens have come home to roost. And a lot of people thought he was making a racial hatred statement. But what he was talking about is when you allow violence, when you perpetrate violence, and when violence is a part of your culture, it's going to fester and it's going to manifest itself in the places where you don't want it to manifest. What do I mean by that? Our society has violence in music, violence in movies, violence in video games. You and I were talking about earlier about a game that our children play called, well, not our children, but children play called Grand Theft Auto. In that game, they get points for killing people, raping women. And yet we sell this game to young people.
And this is a topic that certainly we could go on with for a while, but we are out of time. But you've given us a lot of good issues to talk about and a lot of good programs. I invite you back here in a few months. We'll see how the programs are going.
Okay.
Russ Neal, thank you so much for your time. Councilman Russ Neal, and we want to thank you as well. You can watch this entire interview again in our program over at NewsNite.net. Have a great week, everybody. See you right here next Friday for NewsNight. Good night.